LSU searching for a new head football coach. How is the recruiting world reacting? You'll hear it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And also, welcome to our viewers on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, where you can see us every Monday through Friday. In the last week, it's been very tumultuous for LSU. Brian Kelly was fired after the loss to Texas A&M. Then subsequently, we had all of the topsy-turvy week with the governor of the state of Louisiana, followed by the subsequent mutual parting of ways between LSU and athletic director Scott Woodward. Now, a committee has been formed to hire a new head football coach. A new university president will be named on Tuesday of this coming week, just depending on when you're watching or listening to this, at which point later they'll find a full-time athletic director, which could be Verge Osberry. But it sure sounds like LSU will have a head coach before they have an athletic director, which can't complicate the AD search, but cross that bridge when we get there. Again, a lot has happened in the 6 days, really the last 5.5 days at the time that we're recording this. So I think one thing that, of course, people are going to be concerned over is what does it mean for recruiting? You have current commits, you have targets, you have current players on the team, and then, of course, players that might enter the transfer portal. And there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty around the program right now. So one of the things that Frank Wilson, of course, serves as LSU's recruiting coordinator before he was named interim head coach and still holds that role, was asked about when he met with reporters for the first time this week was, what does a change like this mean for recruiting, and how do you stabilize this recruiting class?
The first business is taking care of our team, our current team. And I think the more that we do that, they become your testimonials. And so what happens is the recruit called Johnny, who's on the team. And what's the status? What's going on with the team? We're good. We got a plan. We had a great practice today. How are you? Man, I'll play this weekend. So now when coach calls prospective student athlete who's talked to current player and they see, they feel, they hear stability, we're good. They're less likely to panic because they're the host of these recruits when they come on campus, when they came on their official visit, when they were here Saturday. And I think a lot of that resonates, that when your team has a good feel, I think it resonates to the recruit. And it could be the opposite, right? If they were in total disarray, uncomfortable, uncertain, I think that could affect the recruiting class as well. And so from a peer standpoint, I think our student athletes that are currently on our team have been testimonials for those recruits. I think those recruits do have questions. The good thing is we have answers. And so in those conversations, it's allowed us at this point to be stable, to hold our class intact, and we feel confident that we'll be able to continue to do so.
I think the key word that Frank said there at the end is stable. And you can tell that was nearly a 2-minute answer. He's given a lot of thought to this, and he understands how this instability could affect the team moving forward. I mean, remember, Frank Wilson was on staff back in 2016 when when Les Miles was fired and Ed Orgeron became the interim. So this isn't like it's anything, such a situation that's totally new, even at LSU for Coach Frank. So an interesting point of view here for LSU to have Frank in that spot. But so much of it is creating stability by illustrating that you have a plan. It's why I think it was so important on Friday at that press conference when Scott Ballard, the head of the board, said in no uncertain terms that Verge Osberry has the autonomy to go hire a head coach. So you're not wondering who's making the hire. Verge Osberry is making the hire. He'll have a staff and there'll be input, but he's making the hire. And Verge said, we're not worried about the contract. I was told go find the best coach. So go find the best coach. That's all creating stability around the entire situation. So that's the internal point of view there from Frank Wilson. we had a chance to visit with Shea Dixon, our buddy from On 3, the Bengal Tiger, and he gave us the reaction to Brian Kelly's firing from the recruiting world.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about it, but you look at, like, I'll compare it to a Penn State, for instance, Matt, and when James Franklin got let go, my Hayes Fawcett, Louisiana native and the Rivals sort of expert on breaking recruiting news nationally, it was pinging about every 5 minutes with someone decommitting from Penn State. And when this has happened with Brian Kelly, no one has decommitted. And they have 17 commits, right? 16 commits going. I'll get to that in a second, but 16 commits were entering the weekend and 17 now, but one for next year, Peyton Houston. So you've got 17, 18 kids total there. None of them, all of them stuck. Why? Well, one, I think when you deal with Louisiana, obviously, and the majority of these kids are from Louisiana, that in border states, that they're committing to LSU for LSU. And the move to put Frank as the interim head coach comes with a lot of different, you could put together a long list of like why it makes sense to do that and stabilize things for a variety of ways. And one is in recruiting. Like, people will talk about Brian Kelly and how involved was he in recruiting or wasn't involved to any large degree. And I've kind of said, all right, well, step back for a second. And that wasn't an expectation, right? It was understood that in this modern era of having a GM that would handle the NIL and rev share and everything else in, hire, stuff like that. And that's Austin Thomas. And then you've got the recruiting side, which position coaches and a long kind of growing list for every college out there of staff who do that, beyond the on-field coaches. And then you've got a guy like Frank who, he wasn't, I don't know, he's got a bunch of titles. I'm sure you just throw a recruiting coordinator in there. He's held it a few times, but is someone who knows everyone on the team, all their parents, everyone in recruiting. So you don't have that kind of Penn State feel to it. It's almost like, hey, look, they may not lose a commit. And if they do, maybe it's not a Louisiana kid and it's not surprising, but for a fact that if you put Frank Wilson in charge of the program for another month plus, that you don't have to worry too much about recruiting. So all of that to say that I would have been more surprised if kids just started decommitting, and that wasn't the case. And I'll end it by saying that they then had a commitment on Monday with no head coach, but
that commitment, by the way, is Kervin Johnson, who we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. So it was interesting to get Shay's perspective there on just comparing and contrasting what happened with the Penn State class and with the LSU class. And one other thing that I think is worth mentioning is the high school NIL component of this. I want to remind you that, NIL had become, with the collective, pay for play. The collective was raising money and you were effectively paying the players on the roster. Well, that can no longer happen with the current players through the collective, right? The current players now are paid through the revenue share and then true third-party NIL deals that have to be vetted through Deloitte, the clearinghouse. However, the majority of states do allow high school NIL, which means high school athletes can do NIL deals through a collective that are not withholding to the rules and regulations of the NCAA. So, for example, Lamar Brown, who's the number one prospect in the state of Louisiana, one of the top prospects in the entire country for 2026, he's committed to LSU. Lamar Brown has an NIL deal through LSU's collective, which, of course, in large part would keep Lamar Brown committed to LSU. I did get a commitment or a comment from Shay on Lamar, which you'll hear in just a second as well. So that's another big reason why you're seeing a lot of the connectivity here. A lot of these players that are committed to LSU presently are already bound to LSU because they're taking money from the collective for NIL deals. They're already being paid through the collective before they ever show up on campus. So some of this tumult here that would normally be the case may not be, because a lot of these guys are financially bound, and those written in all those contracts is if they were to decommit, they would have to pay back the money they've already received. That's not to say if a guy flips to another school, that school wouldn't be willing to reimburse LSU. That could certainly happen, but it is a consideration where a lot of these guys, especially the higher ranked recruits, are already financially bound to LSU. So something to file away. Now, we have more from Shay on Lamar Brown specifically, on on Kervin Johnson, the commitment, which you'll hear about, and on the perception of Frank Wilson throughout the recruiting world. You'll hear that as we continue here. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda is moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. And this week's moment that moved the game forward has to be installing Frank Wilson as the interim head coach, and the job Coach Frank is doing already, getting former players back into the program and sort of galvanizing this team to finish strong over the next 4 games. So when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. We're also brought to you by DoorDash. The weekend is here, so time to look back, crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most, so let's break it down. Of course, we've told you all week about Harlem Berry, his elite rushing performance in the first half, his first career rushing touchdown, which is great to see. And then, of course, this week, great job by Coach Frank Wilson keeping this squad together. And just like Harlem Berry delivered for the Tigers, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day, only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through 11/18. And we're brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Frank Wilson has taken over as LSU's interim head coach, but of course he's the longstanding recruiting coordinator as well. And Shea Dixon spoke on just how important having Coach Frank in that role is for the Tigers.
I just think that, go back, I guess we call it the modern era, right, of recruiting. And we can just say start in like 2000 and go to now. So 25 years or so. There aren't many coaches out there who have stayed in college, who have been at numerous places that are as well known as Frank Wilson. Bruce Feldman wrote a book about Frank Wilson and that Ole Miss staff, Meat Market, which is probably one of the most, certainly not many books about recruiting. I probably should just quit my job and write books about recruiting. But Bruce, that whole thing was one of my favorite kind of insights into how recruiting really worked. And Frank was front and center in that book. And you can go back to that book, like the late Joe McKnight and everyone before then. Like, you've got a guy who for 20 years more has been at the forefront of recruiting 5-stars. And then the relationships he's got with former players is so strong because not just high school recruiting, but when they get on the team, your head coach is not someone who can sit there and have a rapport with everyone on the team. But Frank's the type that does, by and large. So I think that when you look at naming an interim, it makes complete sense to say Frank Wilson's on our staff, go for it, because nearly everyone on the team and their parents and everybody else have a relationship with Frank. They can text him, call him, whatever it might be, and they get things handled. And I think when you look at that, and there is a reality that 30-day window and everyone can enter the portal during the season, they did away with that. I don't think some people missed that because they weren't expecting LSU
I missed
LSU
that.
Fans to have to actually pay attention to that this year. But because of that, you don't have anyone leaving right away. But if you don't have someone like Frank there, it doesn't get stabilized in the next month to where you have this mass exodus the second that they are allowed to leave. And I think you can feel that way now because you're seeing what he's done in recruiting. They did not have a mass exodus with the recruiting class, so I wouldn't expect that to be the case on the team. It would be more of, who is the new coach coming in or whatever it might be, and it's sort of natural attrition in a way that the blow is lessened. So it becomes so much less of a blow to you when you're in Louisiana, most of your kids are from here, and you are a top 5 program in college football, that you can make a staff transition like this and not have to worry about the entire roster falling apart and not bringing in, the high school recruits that you wanted.
Okay, so I think we've established at this point, Frank Wilson at the helm, no immediate decommitments from LSU. The roster is stabilized. None of the current players on the roster opted out. That's not to say that won't happen. Of course, you're going to have players. I don't know that I even say opt out, but you're going to have players transfer at the end of the season at the portal. Obviously LSU will make a bowl game, but opt out of a bowl game. That's natural, happens everywhere. I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about in the immediacy. Brian Kelly fired. Boom. What's the dominoes that fall? Coach Frank has sort of held everything up, which is great to see. And now you start to move forward to finish this 2026 class. Now, a lot of people have asked this week about Lamar Brown. As we all know, Lamar Brown is one of the top players in the country for the class of 2026. He's out of U High in Baton Rouge. And he was a guy that picked LSU over Texas A&M. So the fear was, you watch that game on Saturday night where Texas A&M really bullied LSU in that second half. Could Lamar Brown and the A&M fans that remained were sort of chanting Lamar Brown's name, wanting him to flip. Could that be the impact, considering it was A&M that ended up being the one that issued the final blow to Brian Kelly?
I'd be more worried about that if they had not made a change like this. And I don't even know how worried I was before that, like Saturday night. Obviously, look, A&M was the other school involved here, but this is a Baton Rouge kid, and I've got to remove myself from that mentality of the old school Bama days where it felt like every U-High kid was just going to Bama. And it was like, well, these kids go to school on campus already. They want to do something new, and this program is in a better place than you are right now. Even with A&M doing well this year, I think that you can argue LSU is still the top school of the two. So, and it's a sound argument. I don't think that my panic meter on a Lamar Brown type is not very high right now. And I remember when Lamar committed over the summer, this is a guy, Frank, back in middle school for Lamar, was having him at McNeese's camp. So when he was the head coach there. So their relationship goes back a long way. And I think one thing people need to remember, I have to remind myself of this often just because it's changed recruiting in a way, of NIL and rev share. Like every guy in the class is going to have an NIL rev share agreement in place. And that goes into play whenever they commit to a college. And I think we're seeing a lot fewer decommits, whether you have a coaching change or not. It's a lot tougher to flip guys now, just because the reality of, if they're in a spot where they've already, feel comfortable with everything, and it's not just a verbal commitment, but it's more than that, commitment-wise, that guys just sort of don't just say, hey, look, I'm reopening my process and exploring options. It just doesn't happen a ton. And because of that, I just don't, unless Lamar Brown is starting to visit A&M for games and all of that, I've always just said I think that he winds up at LSU.
It's something worth watching here over the final month here of the regular season in November, and then we'll get to the December signing period. But again, the thing to remember is I will tell you, Lamar Brown is already being paid an NIL deal through the LSU collective. And as it was told to me, he would owe a big chunk of money back to LSU if he were to flip. Now, it's not to say A&M couldn't afford that if it came to it, but it sounds like LSU is going to be in a really stable place there with Lamar Brown, the number one player in Louisiana, the number one athlete in the country. As a matter of fact, in the Rivals industry composite, he is rated as the number one overall player in the country now in the Rivals industry composite. Now, not only did LSU not lose a commitment, they actually gained a commitment from wide receiver Kervin Johnson on Monday after Brian Kelly was fired on Sunday. Here's Shay with that info.
Kervin committed to Louisiana Tech in September, so kind of right as his senior year began. And this is someone they had been really watching closely because he was, as I noted, leading the state in receiving touchdowns. And I think he's right at about 1,000 yards. I know he has 14 touchdowns. So guys on 40-something catches, you're averaging 25 yards a catch. And also, really, this is the impressive, even just as impressive part. 6 foot, a little bit north, Matt, of 6'2" as a senior in high school, already north of 200 pounds. really good measurables, has the track background, everything else that you want to see kind of from a dual sport, multi-sport kid coming out of Central Louisiana. And they've got two commits, right, at receiver, now three, but Jabari Mack out of Destrehan, Kenny Darby out of Airline. Mack's the highest ranked of them all. Like, he's been a top 50 prospect since he kind of came onto the scene. He's 6 foot, 200 probably. And Kenny Darby out of Airline led the state in receiving last year. He's 6 foot, in that 180 something range. So Kervin Johnson being 6'2" and north of 200 gives you that completely different mold of receiver. That's the more of a bigger body, taller, and he's quite productive. So this was sort of a no-brainer. And if it weren't in Louisiana, I think he would have been picking up offers left and right. But it's one of those things when LSU makes a move on you and has found you in Sinlaw at a school like that at Tioga, that everyone else just sort of says, nice grab by LSU there, and doesn't even try to get in the mix. So I saw even he'd taken a photo with DJ Chark on the sidelines this past weekend, and he had a little bit of size on DJ, who obviously ain't too shabby from LSU to the NFL, and as a prospect coming out of that area. So this is one that I'd expect his recruiting ranking does not look the same as it does now when the next wave of updates come in the next month or so.
You know how sometimes we look at sports betting and you'd see a stinky line like an unranked team favorite over a ranked team, or a team you think should be a 2-touchdown favorite, the line is 2 points. That's kind of what I look at when I look at Kervin Johnson. I mean, if I told you, hey, there's a receiver from Louisiana who's 6'2.5", 195 pounds, leads the state in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and oh, by the way, he's a track athlete as well as track speed, you're going, oh, well, he's a 5-star and has offers from everybody, right? Kervin Johnson, 6'2.5", 195. Nationally, now, even just this week, his national ranking has gone from in the thousands to number 605. And he's the number 94 wide receiver now in the composite. So we have already seen his ranking bump up a little bit just since he committed to LSU. But the ranking is down. And I always tell you, I'm less concerned about the star ranking, the rating, all that stuff, and more with who's offered. Well, his offers before LSU did were Louisiana Tech, McNeese, and Grambling. That's it. I think you just had a diamond in the rough at a small school in Sinlaw there at Tioga, and LSU ends up finding him because he blows up now in his senior year, and it feels very much like a Justin Jefferson situation. I'm not telling you that he's going to be Justin Jefferson. What I'm telling you is Jefferson, for much of his recruitment, was a guy with good size, not elite top-end speed. He was at a really great program in Destrehan, but was a 2-star. And signed with LSU as a low 3-star. He was the lowest rated player in LSU's class that year. But sometimes you look at dudes with great size and productivity, and they're Louisiana dudes that want to play at LSU. And if you trust the evaluation, then you go, okay, I'll take that guy. So LSU now gains a commitment since Brian Kelly's firing. So they're up to 17 commits now for the class of 2026. All these guys will have a chance to sign with LSU in December. And it will be interesting to see when you look at who the new coach is and what the approach is with the new coach, with Austin Thomas as the GM. Is this a class where they want to go sign 25? It all depends on what the new coach coming in wants to do and how they want to build a roster. Of course, we'd seen more of an emphasis on the portal this year. And obviously now with only 16 or 17 commitments for 2026, it looks like you're trending that direction as well. Fewer high school players, more portal players. Do we continue to see that? So something worth keeping an eye on, but Tigers land big-time receiver there in Kervin Johnson from Tioga, who doesn't have the high, lofty star rating or ranking right now, but my goodness, he checks a lot of boxes on the measurables, and we'll keep an eye on it as we continue to move throughout this cycle. Tigers have 4 weeks of the regular season remaining with Frank Wilson at the helm. We'll certainly keep an eye on what it means for recruiting as well right here on Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks so much for making this your first listen. Please, if you're on podcast, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.